Yeah, it gives me goosebumps every time. So everyone, welcome to AIME. Welcome to the AIME story. Revolutions or social movements of change, as you know, are never the work of a single individual working in isolation. And yet there is the power of the one person standing against the system and saying, maybe this isn't working. Let's look at another way of doing things. Let's look at a different way of doing things. The AIM story is no different to many revolutions around the world. It has that power of one, but it also has the power of the collective going against the grain. But before we tell you the AIM story, let me first acknowledge the indigenous people of Australia, from which this story comes from. 60,000 plus years of ingenuity, imagination, creativity that have powered this, probably what is the largest, longest continuing civilization on the planet. So let's pay our respects to the elders, past, present, and especially those emerging in the future, who we at AIM have the privilege of working day in, day out. If any of you have been to Australia, you would see how beautiful these lands are, and they are testament to the indigenous people of this land who've cared for the land and who are the traditional owners and custodians. I think they prefer the word custodian more than owners. There's no ownership of the land, but there is a relationship that intertwines people and land. So let's acknowledge that. Let's also acknowledge each of our unique human stories. Like, I come from the south of India. I pay my respects to my ancestors. I pay respects to all the ancestors that all of you represent. We're all a long lineage of great humans who've come before us, great humans who will come after us, and all the many influential people that have inspired me through the years, the likes of Mandela or Malala Yousafzai, Mahatma Gandhi. So yeah, there have been many people who've lit the spark that we get to hold today. So on that note, let's jump into the AIM story. I'll tell you, maybe before we get to the AIM story in depth, I'll tell you a little bit about me. It's very important for us at AIM to speak your own truth, to own your own story, to know who you are. It's one of our first values, know yourself. So as I mentioned, I come from the south of India. I'm indigenous to that land. I was one of the kids AIM could have worked with had we been in India. We're still not in India. I'm trying to fix that behind the scenes. But yeah, in short, like, I grew up with relative disadvantage, was potentially one of the kids that could have ended up on the street, happened several times, but then had great role models, mentors, guides in my life that steered my ship along at different stages. I ended up at what is the best university in Asia to do my undergrad in commerce and economics, went straight to a corporate career with the Bains and McKinseys of the world in strategy consulting. Thought I had it made, to realize it was quite a hollow dream I was chasing. And that was, like, for me, a moment of great turning, but a moment of awakening and saying, okay, this isn't working. Let's find another way that's working. So I ended up in Italy on a whim, doing a master's in international relations and working with the European Commission and the Parliament and seeing how we could move wealth between nations and between regions, and in the social policy sphere, see how we could build a more equitable EU as a whole. So I'm familiar with the beautiful lands of Scotland, where many of you or some of you are, and yeah, Europe is dear to me as well. But from there, like, I felt really fulfilled in my role, but I was really drawn to the arts as a calling, which took me to the UK, to Birmingham, which was cold and grey, I'll admit, but it was still a beautiful part of the world. And I was introspecting a lot. And that's when I was, following my passion for cinema, did a master's there, and then ended up working in that sector for a few years, doing quirky offbeat movies that do really well in festivals, but are not good for commercial viewing. So stay away. And that sort of led me in some mysterious way back to India, where I was asking these bigger questions in life, including who am I? What's my purpose? Why should I wake up? Why should I do anything in the morning, for instance? And that sort of took me on the whole monastic journey of living with the monks for a few months. And I was sleeping for a fair few months under the stars, not knowing where I was headed. But that was a pivotal moment in my life. One of the best gifts that I received was from living with the monks for an extended period of time, and knowing that no matter what I did in life, it had to have a social purpose behind it. And that if I was to create any change, it shouldn't be change that just affects me, but the world at large, which brought me to Australia 4.5 years ago. And that's when I first came in contact with the AIM story. I was blown away by what was happening on the ground in different locations around Australia. And back then we were just contemplating going global when I first landed. And we'll tell you what that journey is, how it shaped out to be. But I'd love to hear from another one of our great humans, mentors, who's on the call with us. Brenda, over to you. Tell us your story and the AIM story, and I'll jump in.
Yeah, what a special little festival we're all attending. Unique times, a unique imagination, and it's been fantastic to be in the loop of this festival over the last couple of weeks as we've prepared. So my name's Brendan. I've always grown up feeling a little bit like an alien in my world. I lived two lives as a young kid. I used to lean my head against the bus window on my 10-minute bus ride to high school and repeat the prayers that I had sort of made up, and it would go something like this: please help me to treat people the way I'd like people to treat me. Please help me to help the needy. Please help me not to judge people. And I would sort of repeat these prayers even into my 16, 17, 18 years old. There was a deep yearning for me for morality and a connection to a higher power, but that wasn't the cool thing of that day. So I was teased a little bit, and I also lived a little bit of a separate cool life out there, partying and surfing and things like that. I grew up to sort of as a really high achiever, getting the overall kind of awards for academia and sports throughout my high school and primary school, and then landed in a very conventional pathway to med science. I was sitting in a big lecture theatre with 200 peers, knowing that there's a big world out there full of imagination and creativity and ambition. But here I was sitting in this very square room, and I took a quick trip over to Tahiti and caught 20-foot waves, and I was very passionate about catching waves. And it just, something really special happened. I came home, I quit university, and I decided to pursue making documentaries for the biggest waves in the world for about 6 years. And I did end up catching the biggest wave ever paddled into in history, but that, I don't say that for an ego drive, but I'm very proud of the drive that I put into it and the imagination that I filtered into that little experience. But I got very mentally ill in the process. And as you guys well know, many driven people suffer from obsessive tendencies. I'm your perfect case study. So I got very ill, where to the point where I couldn't actually function. I was sort of bumping through psychologist appointments and medication, and it became so tragic for me that I was purely in the pursuit of trying to live in my own mind with a level of peace, and everything slowed down for me. So I spent a lot of time, not dissimilar to Parul's story, sitting in Aboriginal communities on the south coast that were just adjacent to my now wife's house. And I found a level of peace there and just this humility, a little bit like the theme of this festival, this gorgeous humility. And it just attracted me so deeply. I was very lost and confused and mentally ill. But after finishing my last documentary, I popped back to uni to do something just very normal. I did an education degree because I liked kids and I liked sport. So I did PE education. I went through 4 of the most suffocating and kind of difficult 4 years of my life, sitting in this education setting with all this drive and creativity, mental illness and all this stuff. And I was sitting in this room as a 25-year-old, having seen the whole world for the last 6 years, next to 200 18-year-olds, with one person up the front telling us how to teach creatively, but he was standing behind a pulpit style thing. And that was, I went through that, and out the back I popped and ready to do my teacher's interview, but I was invited to a small program on the south coast to talk to a bunch of Aboriginal kids. And I turned up to tell my story about facing fear and how I rode waves and how I could sort of tell them some of what I've learned in my life. And I saw this room full of these gorgeous Black Australian kids with this life and this connection, and they're all talking to me and asking me questions, and there was just an energy in the air, and I hadn't had that experience in education yet. I'd spent 4 years bumping through different schools, predominantly, just bouncing around New South Wales schools, doing all my experiences. But that was really pivotal for me. And at that point, I threw in the towel with the teaching. I didn't even do my teacher's interview, which is professional suicide. But it was a decision that I knew in me. I'm going to work for this organisation. I'm going to be a part of what they're doing. And I sat down a couple of months later with the CEO, and I remember fiddling with a little piece of paper, nervous as hell, just telling my life story. I'd never worked a full-time job in my life, and I said to him, look, I'm here, I'm for you, I'm going to do it. And then he called me back and gave me the boss's job to the job that I'd applied for. So he invested this incredible kind of amount of trust in me, and that kind of led me down this path of, I was actually dry reaching in the car park for 3 months, of the first 3 months of my job, because I was so nervous about the whole thing. But it gave me this incredible buoyancy after a very difficult decade of mental illness. And that started my AIME journey. And that began sort of what I found life again. And for me to pass on that life to the 1,000 kids I worked with on the south coast of New South Wales, and then now broadly to move into recruiting mentors all through America and Africa, and now talking to a group in Scotland, has been such a joy. And the pioneer behind the origin of the story is Jack Manning-Bancroft, who couldn't make it today, but he sort of has been super ambitious and always questioned the status quo and said, we can imagine a new way of doing this, and stuck to his guns regardless of criticism and challenges and other things. And 16 years later, we've worked with 20,000 marginalised youth. They've transitioned through school at the same rate as their mainstream peers, and that's across 6 countries and about 350 schools. So we're on a mission to make the world a fairer place through imagination, mentoring, and some pretty simple principles of organising change. And I suppose that's what brings us to a festival like this today, and allows us to kind of engage with you guys who are also alternative thinkers and brave ones that want to wrangle with the status quo and start to believe in something right out there. Moonshots and the whole shoot for the moon and you'll land in the stars, and let's play in the stars over this next half an hour. I'll pass it back to Parul, who's going to take us on a small journey that sort of began this year.
Yeah, beautiful. Thanks, Brenda, for sharing that. And I hope you can all appreciate and understand the power of stories. Stories define who we are, and that's why Brendan tells a story or I tell my story. And the AIME story, as Brenda neatly captured, started in 2005. And the challenge we were faced with was Indigenous disadvantage. Kids were not completing schooling at the same rate as their peers. Everything was looking dark and gloomy, and people had said it just cannot be solved. And then Jack, with fire in his belly, said, I'm going to fix this. I'm going to do it today. I'm going to get to work. And he mobilized 25 of his peers to mentor 25 kids. And immediately there was a spike in attendance. So we knew we'd found something in the early days. And through the years, as Brenda mentioned, lots of really good humans have put their weight behind the movement, including your Mandela family in Africa or former prime ministers here in Australia. And lots of really influential people have put their wealth, influence, power, weight, and lots of really amazing everyday citizens have given us the gift of their time to be able to build this movement that, as Brenda mentioned, has been lighting up 6 countries for the past 16 years. And here we are today. So this year we were on track to delivering our biggest program, but as we know, COVID-19 hit us, and like the rest of the world, but we were already quite ahead in the digital education space. We'd worked out a way of not necessarily getting kids to learn new things, but learn how to learn. And the magic of the model lies in the fact that you learn by doing. And we flipped the paradigm. We don't think, so all the kids, if you are familiar with the education space, which I assume everyone here is, all the kids that we work with come from marginalized backgrounds. The narrative they've been handed down is, you're the problem kid. We sort of flip that paradigm. We say, you are the solution, lead us into the next age, lead us into the future. And we step out of the way, set the platform, and the kids rise more than every time. And it's been really beautiful for us to watch that occur time and time again. Now, there's a lot of research done on our work, which I won't jump into, but there's a couple of Harvard case studies, there's KPMG cost benefits, there's 7+ years of independent research that looks at the experiences we've created for the kids as well as for the mentors. So effectively, AIME's been a bridge between those with power and those without. And in between, on this sort of middle ground, we've built our world of imagination, which is the gray space in between, which is our complex social network for good, where humans can be different to each other, acknowledge each other's differences, but put them aside for a moment and collectively look out at the world and dream what a fairer world together can look like. Yeah, so this year, when COVID-19 hit us, a bunch of us got on a call, me, Brendo, Jack, a few others, and we said, what can we do to really rise to the challenge? How can we deliver? And one of our values is 21 values that guide our work, which I've neatly snuck behind me. But one of the values is yes and, which comes from improv theater. So when you hear a new idea, what do people often do? Like they go, yeah, that's cool, but this is why it's not going to work, but this is the thing that you need to change. So we hear a new idea, we go, yeah, that's great. And let me build on top of that. Let me put another block. And so within that 1 hour dreaming session, we had what was the spine of Imagination TV. We'll watch a video in a few minutes about what Imagination TV is and what we've achieved through it. But effectively, we found a clever way of still turning as mentors to work with kids. And in fact, like it opened a whole new universe to us. We could bring high quality, high caliber mentors who normally we would not be able to connect to kids directly, but through this live YouTube stream. And I don't know if any of you have done TV or film production, doing like a weekly live stream is hard enough, but doing a daily live stream is pretty much bonkers. But that's been AIME's ethos from the early days. We've done some really wacky, wild things, but all because we know we're committed to change, because we know we want to move systems and make them fairer for all. I think this is the perfect segue into having a short video look at Imagination TV, and I'll circle back with where we're headed next. Over to you, Brenda.
Mr. Coronavirus swept through northern Italy. The further devastation from
across the world, schools have been closed for weeks.
What impact is this going to have on learning?
Welcome to Imagination TV. The old rules are out and we're in a very new time.
Work hard and fight with me to see and reach in this better world.
Why don't we create zero waste buildings that use what we currently call waste as a nutrient source?
In every person is the capacity to become better and to become committed to a fairer world.
If we keep treating the people as the problem, then we will have a bigger problem than we can ever handle.
All of these things that seem difficult require imagination.
What we can be sure of is the things that we're doing today in work are not the things that we will be doing tomorrow.
The other way we can pull that carbon out of the atmosphere is actually through seaweed, believe it or not.
One of the things that I imagine in 10 years' time is that we've cracked the code on zero waste houses. I imagine that fashion has completely moved and we're again running off a completely recycled or sustainable world. I imagine that we've broken open classrooms, frameworks, and the teachers are teaching with imagination and the kids aren't outside the margins anymore. Where are we? What are we doing in this world?
Let's just say a young person is laying in bed.
Late at night, sleeps, rustles around.
Looks under the bed, and as they look under, this huge claw comes up out of the bed.
Plunging into darkness.
And then he arrives and the ocean kind of splits in three.
I think it should be another person.
I want them to have a cool sidekick, and maybe it's like something from another world.
Alien dog or something.
Yeah.
The alien dog should be named Death.
What rules
rebels or you brave to make our world a better place. Be rebellious, but not for the wrong reasons.
We will rise up. We will change the future.
We can and will change the world with our voices.
That wraps us up. 98 episodes. So we've had lots of fun. We've invented lots of stuff, and we're only beginning. And I think it's been an incredible time of resilience and complexity. And we've really loved everybody in the network around that's been supporting us. We'll see you all in a few months' time when we launch a university and help change the planet.
That's us trying to sum up in 3 minutes what 365 days or whatever this year has been so far has been for us. And yeah, we've done 99 episodes, as you saw on the show. That's roughly 20 weeks worth of daily live streams, which has been phenomenal for us to be able to pull off in such a short time. Alongside, I don't know if you clocked that, we've done several cool campaigns. Once we realized when people within our immediate ecosystem, like thousands of them, were not able to pay their rent. And when we looked outside at the world at large, there were millions who were struggling to pay their rent due to COVID and the economic recession it's cost us. We said, what can we do to turn up in this situation? And it's typical of AIME to, even if it's not in our core business, what is a core business after all when you're standing up for a fairer world? We said, what can we do to amend this? And we sort of took our most successful fundraising product, which is our hoodie. And yeah, I'll come back to this hoodie in a minute. But yeah, we took our most successful fundraising product, turned it into a social enterprise called This Hoodie Pays Rent. And up the front, it says This Hoodie Pays Rent. At the back, it says This Hoodie Mentors Kids. And we split half the profits with people who are struggling to pay the rent, and the other half obviously go to putting another mentor into kids' lives. And it's been phenomenal. We've raised over 40,000 just in the past 3 to 4 months since launching that. As you saw in that video, we also started just because we thought we weren't doing enough and people were sort of losing creativity in these gnarly times. We said, what can we do to keep creativity not only alive, but like leading from the front? We know now more than ever, imagination is required. So we launched a feature film with just one word as the script title, Imagine. And as you saw, we had like few recognizable faces. I don't know if you knew any of them, but like several people jump in alongside with the kids, and collectively they shaped up the script of what the world will look like post-COVID. And it's been really beautiful to watch that come to life. We'll soon be filming, like individual filmmakers all around the world will be making different segments of the movie, and we'll cut it together and launch it hopefully next year when COVID clears in a Fox Studios or something like that. But that's really exciting for us. Imagine the film coming to life. And then We Imagine is our global hoodie campaign, which we run each year. And this year, because it was the 10th anniversary of the AIME hoodie, and the hoodie has really been the symbol of change. It's what has moved people to act. It's the uniform of the revolution, so to speak. And so this year we got like artwork from across the 3 continents that we operate in, from the kids that we work with. So up here is a beautiful art from a kid who comes from Washington, but was part of our LA program. He's an artwork from one of the kids in Nigeria, and he's one from a beautiful indigenous kid in Sydney. And collectively, we imagine what a fairer world looks like. At the back, Jack's put his pledge of what the future world looks like for him in the next 10 years. And I've done my pledge here, and people can make their own pledges on the action sleeve. So that's a really cool hoodie. Yeah, Brendo's showing his pledge too. So check us out. And it's a wonderful way of uniting people who come from all walks of life. Like Brendo is so different to I am, Jack is so different to I am. And yet we come together as a collective of humans and collectively work towards what we think a world can look like. So this is all the things we've been doing this year. And I don't know if you heard that, but at the end of the video, Jack sort of mentioned we'll come back around in a couple of months when we launch a university. So yeah, that's what's coming up ahead for the AIME. Off the back of one of the most complex years in human history, there's research coming out that says 163 million years have been lost, 4.3 billion livelihoods have been lost due to COVID, like some ridiculous numbers. And we said, what can we do again to turn up and really uplift not just us as a group of people, but the whole collective to the next level. So we said, let's launch a university called IMAGI-NATION University. Let's take all the things that we've learned through the years, and let's, if we've been able to unlock thousands of university students at scale and got them to work with kids day in, day out to create change, Imagine if we could do this with a whole ecosystem of players. Imagine if we could train thousands of school students, thousands of uni students, thousands of school teachers, thousands of organizational executives, and everyday citizens to collectively go with us and imagine what the world can look like in the next decade or so. Imagine what a better, brighter, more beautiful world we can create. And that's where Imagination University comes in on the 1st of October, which is, I think, a week away. Yeah, we will be opening applications on our website and people can enroll directly. I think the first page would just be an EOI where you submit your name. And like I said, there's degrees open for the 5 categories that I mentioned up the top. And effectively, we're giving people the 3 greatest gifts that we've collected or learned through the years. The first being imagination as the first principle behind every thought and action. Imagination, as we know, is the precursor to innovation. Einstein, one of the greatest seekers of knowledge, said, imagination is more important than knowledge. Why did he say that? Have you stopped and wondered about that? Like, it's really important to come back to imagination as the first principle. The second thing that we can offer to the world is mentoring, this structured mentoring methodology. And we believe everyone, every human can be and should be a mentor in some way, shape, or form. If you're part of this universe, if you're part of this world, there is this constant flux you're living in. You're learning, you're giving, you're sharing, and that's effectively the role of a mentor. And that's even more poignant in the case of educators, because the role of the educator, and one of the greatest challenges of the 21st century, is for these educators, who we are, is to cross over the line that separates the teacher and the student. There's this line where the desk starts and the teacher stands here and the student sits there, is to cross that line, sit alongside the kids or stand alongside the kids, look at the world around us and make sense of the complex world we live in. We don't have the power of information as educators. I know when I was studying, like, people used to have power of information over me. Now we've got these little beasts in our pockets and I have access to a world of information. So do kids. So the role of the 21st century educator, we believe, is to be a mentor, problem solver, guide to the kids. And the last greatest gift we can offer to the world is, how do you organize change? What are the basic, simple principles? How do you put together complex humans collectively working together in a social network aimed at good, instead of a social network that fosters discord or, just shifting the way people think about the world, shifting the way people act. And that's what we're trying to do with Imagination University. And there's 5 different streams, just so you get it. Like, the first one is for school students, and that's effectively for school students who want to be entrepreneurs or artists with us. And there's 5 different sub-streams, accelerator programs that we've created for them through the years. And we're turbocharging that with the Imagination University. The second stream is for university students, and they've been our hero figure within AIME. So far, that's the category we've invested the most amount of time and effort into. And we know from 16 years of doing this work that they are indeed the future power holders of the world. They're going to be the future prime minister, musicians, artists, what have you, of the world. And even today, some of our strongest allies and ambassadors, whether in corporate boardrooms or government chambers, happen to be original day mentors. So they carry forth this DNA of giving back into the world. The third stream is for school teachers. And that's effectively, like, we believe school teachers want to teach with imagination, but there's so many barriers around what they can or cannot do. And we effectively want to free their minds to be able to bring more imagination to the classroom while they meet their needs for curriculum and everything else, timetable that they have to get through. It is a hard job, so our heart goes out to teachers as well. The fourth stream is for organizational executives, so CEOs, senior execs, directors. And the idea is we want to see diversity within top management level across all organizations in the world. We're not going to shift the system if just we start working with one category of people and forget that more than half of the boardrooms, in fact, I'd take a guess that 90% of corporate boardrooms and government chambers are still filled with white men. I almost don't like saying it, but it's a fact of life that we have to acknowledge. And to really bring diversity to the, not only just in the equity office of the university or the equity office of the organization, but there should be diversity within the boardroom. Leadership should look as diverse as the community around us. And for that, we've created a program called the Co-CEO program, where young people between the ages of 18 to 25 who come from marginalized backgrounds get to shadow our executive teams. So someone shadows Jack, someone would shadow me. And within a year, they get the same opportunities that we are given. And more often than not, we'd sidestep and let them lead from the front, whether it's negotiating with the Prime Minister or landing a conversation with the United Nations or what have you. So that's the fourth stream. And the last stream is for citizens, any human anywhere that doesn't fit in the top 4 categories that I mentioned, but still wants to mobilize change in their local communities. We open the doors for them to join IMAGI-NATION University, make their own pledges, and build a fairer world with us. That's roughly it for me. Brendo, do you want to give us a call to action? What can people on this call do with us? Whether it's IMAGI-NATION TV, IMAGI-NATION University, jump in.
Yeah, as you can kind of get from the the vibe of this last half an hour, I think, we're pretty hell bent on making sure that we do our best in our lifetime to redistribute wealth, to imagine new ways of doing things, to break down barriers and rebuild new ones with new unlikely alliances. So like you guys on the call are, in many ways, like you get all this, but I just kind of like to extend the invitation to enroll yourself into, one of those 5 streams, get your networks enrolling into one of those 5 streams of IMAGI-NATION University in the next month when apps open on our website, aimmentoring.com. And I think with ambition and believing that anything's possible, we've shown over the last 16 years that, many people said you can't possibly have a punt at closing the gap in Australia, which is a 200-year-long issue that has been absolutely, untouchable in many people's eyes. But with the pig-headed hopefulness, another one of our values, we've been able to really make a good dent, or at least one of the biggest cracks at closing the gap in Australia. And now we're off and running through America and Africa, and really want you guys with us to believe and dream and start to reshape through IMAGI-NATION University in your own individual lives. A couple of questions that were really fascinating. Marie, really appreciate you jumping in there and being active on the chat line. I think one of the funnest things we've done at AIME, and I think, when we've done over the years, we've done this really fascinating program called Keys to the City. And you've got a question in there that's sort of alluding to reverse mentoring. And when we start to redesign the world and looking at diversity in boardrooms, one of our exec staff is 23 years old and she's one of the kids from the program. And when we start to look at designing new ways of doing education or doing life, or, looking at new ways to look at the economics of the world, I think having young people really lead that conversation, especially people that have got the grit and hustle, that have bumped through some of the marginalized demographics that, we're alluding to. And we've got this funny program, Keys to the City, where we literally sit in a room. Now it's a virtual room, but it's, you say to the kids, we haven't scheduled anything for this next 20 minutes. The keys and the ball is in your court. The keys are in your hands, and the silent, sort of semi-nervous, but this gorgeous awkwardness arises, and then it's sort of taken by leadership energy. One of the kids slowly gets up and begins to take that stage and take that initiative, and that is some of the most magical energy I've experienced, because what happens there is that the true roots of that kid's leadership and that kid's experience become, at the forefront to lead 100 odd people or whoever is in the room. So we've translated that in IMAGI-NATION TV, which is launching across 3 continents, US, Africa, and Australia, in 1 week. We're going 1 school a day for half an hour, doing IMAGI-NATION TV, hosted by marginalized kids, reverse mentoring their principal, their staff, and these kids are going to take the stage as producers and hosts to mentor, actually provide a kind of an agenda and a conversation for global mentors and their principal to shift the stigma around their identity and their capacity within their school, and then we'll bump to the next school. More info on Imagination TV and what the AIME rocket ship can provide schools in the US and Africa and Australia, if you guys want that. So I suppose calls to action would be, enrollment in Imagination University and get the AIME rocket ship to your school if you've got a network in Australia or US or Africa. And
Brilliant.
I suppose
with you, Brenda.
Yeah, you go. Yeah.
One or two minor touches. Yeah, with the African time zone, it's open to schools in the EU region as well. It's open to Scotland. So yeah, if you want to invite the AIM School rocket ship, absolutely feel free to, which is Imagination TV effectively. And the call to action with Imagination University is join us if you're willing to work with us, if you're willing to work for it. If people dream and say things that we're going to change and we're going to do this and that, and then don't act, if there's not effort behind the word, then don't join us. Like, we're not afraid to be very clear with that thing. So join us if you want to work with us over the next year to do some really wonderful things. But if you are too caught up or there's other things that take priority, then please step aside. So let's remember that it takes effort. Like the Dalai Lama, who's a big proponent of nothingness, says, I always say it's nothing, 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 but you've still got to do the effort to get to nothing, which is a paradox. But yeah, so effort is critical for us. I'm just scrolling through some of your questions. Yeah, Keys to City is beautiful. Thanks for sharing that, Brendo. Another thing we do with the kids is called failure time. And of the 3-hour blocks that we spend together, 1 hour is called failure time. One of our values is failure. Another one actually is called brave goals. And I think that fits really well with creative bravery. But effectively what failure time is it's a modern day Acropolis. And we set up stations, 10 to 12 different stations, all sort of different knowledges that get transmitted to the kids. But the kids self-select their learning journey and everything is under the lens of failure. So we invite the teachers, we invite the parents, we invite the whole village into the school, into the university to learn from the kid and to teach the kid. And the kids sort of decide, oh, that doesn't sound cool. Like I want to do the art station, or I want to learn how to throw the boomerang. And the best part about it, because it's all under the lens of failure, the more you fail, the more you enjoy doing the activity. And us as mentors, we sort of step 10 paces out of our comfort zone and be like, oh, I've never done this. I don't know how to do it. Let's do it. Let's go. And then the kid takes one step out of their comfort zone, and collectively it's magic. It's really beautiful to watch that occur day in, day out. So those are some of the things we've been up to in our worlds. And the question about how did Indigenous people feel about AIME at first, I will firstly say that's one of the most awkward conversations ever, because I'm not Indigenous Australian, Brenda is not Indigenous Australian. And it's good to call it out. Like, it's funny when people make decisions or speak on behalf of other people, but don't come from that same community. So let's own that and let's be like, we don't know what Indigenous people feel or think or say. So let's leave that one out, but just know that Indigenous communities have deeply appreciated the work we've been able to do for the past 16 years. There have been some significant challenges, especially when we went global. Lots of people said, hey, but you could spend those same resources and that same energy on working with more kids here. And we said, it's like saying, I found a cure for cancer, just to take it to an extreme level, but I can only give the cure to this community and not to anyone else. And we said it's our obligation morally to share what we've learned when we know this thing works with the rest of the world. And that started our global mission 4 years ago. We even chartered a plane, which was one of our brave goals, to bring and unite all the revolutionaries from around the world that wanted to lead change, all under the same roof in the place where Brendo is in, Wollongong. Brendo led that hustle quite a bit in different parts of the world, just to unite all these revolutionaries, come together, learn from each other, and set our path ahead for the years to come. And that was a really beautiful experience that was created in the global expansion phase of AIME. And the Indigenous community has come around to us sort of being a global entity, with the heart of the movement still being powered by Indigenous Australia. And that has been another magic moment for us, is to witness that global unfolding. Now, the question around the 23-year-old, I think you're referencing Rianne Brendo. With Rianne's case, and with all the kids that we work with, So there's 3 different things we track with them. The first one is, are they completing their schooling, and are they transitioning to post-secondary pathways, which is university employment or further training, at the same rate or higher than the rest of the population. And that's why the corporates or the governments or what have you love us. And that's effectively success in the traditional sense of schooling, but we don't believe that's true success. That's part of it. The second stream that we track is, how are we shifting their internal mindsets? What's the change in the values that people are experiencing, both kids and mentors that connect with us? And those are the 21 values we track change against. And people sometimes say that's a lot of values to track change against, including researchers. And we say it takes that many ingredients to create something wonderful. We can track the change against those 21 values. And yeah, so Rianne would probably be the best person to speak about how her 21 values have shifted. But effectively, the mindset of the kids goes from a world that tells them they cannot to a world that tells them they can and they will. And that's part of our research, already documented in different research studies. And the last thing that we track for the kids is, are we creating these accelerated growth opportunities for them? Are we creating greater entrepreneurship opportunities, greater art opportunities? And there we go. Brendo's pulled up this slide to show you what I'm speaking about. If you go to the next, or go to the next one as well, Brendo, just to quickly show what we're tracking for the power holders of the world. So that's it, changing the immediate ecosystem of youth. What are we doing with the teachers? What are we doing with the university students? And what are we doing with the power holders of the world today? So that's how we sort of track our success against those 6 pillars. And can we see the 21 values? Do you have a slide, Brendo? But otherwise, I'm happy to, you know what? Let's pull it up. Yeah, so that should give you a good idea. When I said brave goals, it's big, risky, audacious, visionary, endless goals. It's not your smart goals that everyone says is good to set up, but yeah, those are our 21 values that guide our work at different stages. And we can share this later with you all if you'd like. I think, yeah, there is one final video we'd love to play. I don't know if we have time for that, or if you want to ask questions, feel free to unmute yourselves, talk to us. We'd love.
Yeah, let's get some noise in the house. Let's take each other off mute and just be a bit human.
Just on behalf of all of the team and I think everybody here, hugely powerful. I'm quite emotional, and it was from the very beginning of that movie. You had me in the palm of your hand, guys. Amazing. It's been an absolute privilege to work with you. So thank you so much. And if you want to hop on over to the Discovery tent, I know Karen's running a fantastic event over there. Brendan and Parul, I have the feeling that this is the start of something really big. Thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor to be with you this morning. Take care. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Bye.